This episode of Freedom Revamped the podcast was sponsored by Krakatoa Coffee Company. Krakatoa is a Black-owned coffee company that sells a variety of coffee roasts to satisfy every coffee drinker's palate. What you will get are satisfyingly rich, robust, and smooth coffee flavors. Their coffee comes in standard, espresso, whole bean, and single-serve cups. They also sell mugs in case you need something to drink their delicious coffee from. And they offer gift cards in several different denominations. So, head on over to krakatoacc.com and follow them across the social medias at Krakatoa Coffee Company.
Hello and welcome back to the Freedom Revamped podcast. I am your host, DeShon, and I am so excited to be joined by Kayla. Kayla, say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So, Kayla, before we hop into things, I would love for you to kind of just tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Kayla. I am from Jackson, Mississippi. I am 24. A couple years ago, graduate of Mississippi State University, where I majored in finance. So I work full time in the financial services industry. I also just started a platform, a blog named after myself, KaylaAlexis.com, and it's a lifestyle blog platform that I will use to educate, uplift, and inspire young adults like myself who just now into the workforce and kind of just figuring out different problems with life and just figuring out the whole adulting thing and how to navigate.
That is so important right now because I'm 26 years old and still trying to figure out adulting. So I know that platform is going to be a blessing to many.
Yeah.
So as we go ahead and hop into today's episode, our founder and creator, Courtney, talks about this concept of practicing freedom. So before we discuss how you practice freedom, I would love to know how you define freedom.
Personally, I define freedom as permission to express myself and just be me. I think there are a lot of instances and times through life that we as people, we are in spaces that we don't necessarily feel like we can be ourselves totally or, just let loose and be, free in all things, how we talk or how we dress or how we look or things like that. So that's how I see freedom is permission to express myself freely when it comes to everything.
Awesome, Kayla. So when you define freedom that way, how do you go about practicing it daily?
Um, so basically not caring about what people think when it comes to, like I talked about, being in spaces where, we as people might not be able to express ourselves freely. So, I work in a corporate setting. And so, how that is, especially being young, black, female, you know, I might have to watch how I wear my hair or how I dress, and things like that. I don't necessarily agree with that all the time, what those standards are. So I'm free with the way I wear my hair, my style. And, I think that's just my way of, being free, giving myself permission to be free, to express myself, in the ways that I'm able to and that I'm best at.
I would agree. I work in leasing, so I'm kind of in an office setting as well. And
Mhm.
oftentimes I'm a very eclectic, so I'm really used to patterns and color, like that, how I express
Mhm.
myself, and kind of having to pull some of that back in that work setting because, you want to be professional. So you want to have on your one colored top and your one colored bottom and everything to kind of conform to the setting, but like also kind of feeling like in a way I can't really fully express who I am. So I definitely agree with that. I am so excited to hop into the conversation of self-image. It is 2020 and we are immersed in social media and all these different perceptions and perspectives that are presented to us via media. And I just really want to talk about how that affects us and the way in which we view ourselves. So I'll answer the questions with you so you are not alone because these are some questions that are going to require a little bit of transparency. But the first question is, how do you view yourself?
I like to call myself like a creative minimalist. I consider myself as kind of the definition of like less is more. I know I talked about, being expressive when it comes to like clothes and hair, but I also think, I don't do what they say do the most. I kind of don't do the most, but just enough that it still speaks volume or that it still, stands out. And so whether that be, my clothes or my hair or when I speak, and I don't try to hide who I am. What you see is what you get, pretty much, until you, get to know me on a deeper level, of course. But yeah, that's how I view myself.
I would agree. I mean, I kind of just I jumped into it a little bit when I said that I would view myself as eclectic, but I definitely am a creative. I didn't tell you much about who I am, but I'm actually an actress outside of my regular profession of being a leasing professional. That's my day job, but my purpose in life is acting. And because of that, I am super creative, super eclectic. Sometimes I don't do the most, but I do probably come off to people as a lot of energy. I definitely fill a room, very demanding presence because that's what comes with being an actress. We usually are people who don't care too much about what people think. We can't really care too much about what people think because we put ourselves in very vulnerable positions in, all the different TV shows or films that we get involved in. I definitely would consider myself overall eccentric is probably the best word. But to kind of talk about, since I'm bringing up these words in conjunction with who I am, I would like for each of us to pick 3 words that we think best describe who we are.
Okay. So I definitely would have to still use the word minimalist. That would definitely be one of them. Go getter and dreamer.
I love dreamer. I'm such a dreamer, and that's a lost craft. People don't have a sense of imagination anymore.
Mm-mm.
Or like they don't have a sense, like I don't know how else to describe it, but like I very much am a dreamer. Um, if I had to pick 3 words to define me, I'm gonna say evolving. I feel like I'm never ever the same. I kind of go with the flow. I like to compare myself like with the metaphor of a plant, like always feeling like I kind of go with the seasons and like, let my branches bend with the wind, just trying my best to kind of conform to what life throws at me. That sometimes can be hard, but that's definitely a word to describe me. Along with evolving, I would say creative. I spend so much time creating in any way that I can. I'm huge on DIY projects. Always trying, if I can do it myself, I'm not gonna pay anybody else to do it. Really big on being creative. My last word would be persistent. Um, I think I'm very persistent in my pursuit of things. The way I look at life, anything is possible with God. So most
Right.
things, most everything is attainable. But if I had to pick 3 words, I would definitely say that I'm evolving, creative, and persistent. How do you think others perceive you? So now you have kind of given an idea of how you view yourself, but how do you think others perceive you? Because obviously that's 2 different things. You have a good sense of who you are, but then there's always people who view you and see something different. So how would you say people perceive you?
I will the first thing, something I always get, people see me as quiet and observant. Anytime I, first meet someone or, get around new people, I like to kind of observe them just to get a feel. I like to get a feel of who other people are, but people definitely would say that I'm quiet and observant at first, but definitely people would say I'm a hard worker and about my business. Too serious at times is what some people would call it. But yeah, but anybody that really knows me would also say that I like to laugh and have fun, but also a thinker. I'm really deep. I always like to know why. And someone just said this. When I get into conversations, I talk. It's like you're watching a movie when I'm telling a story. Really, really deep into conversations. Always wanting to know the why and uncovering different things when talking to people.
That's awesome. So we kind of much of what you described is me too. So
Mhm.
I'm definitely if people were to perceive me, they would say that I'm goofy. I get that all the time. People think that I'm super confident, which is something that I've grown into over the years. I mean, it's an ongoing battle to be a woman and to truly be confident, or more specifically, to be a Black woman and to truly be confident. So over the years, I didn't always feel that way. Now there's pretty much nothing you can tell me.
Right.
My ongoing phrase right now is I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So whenever anything or anyone tries to stand in the way of my confidence, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. There's absolutely nothing you can say to me. That there's that. Then I think that people would also say that kind of going back to how I said I'm persistent, people would tell you that I'm about my business, which sometimes makes me come off as bossy or a know-it-all, and that's not the case.
Right.
But I just really like to know things, so oftentimes I do know things
Hmm.
because I spend so much time trying to educate myself. Like if it's something I don't know, I'm gonna make the effort to try to figure it out. So
Hmm.
oftentimes that makes me come off as a know-it-all, which is to each his own.
Right.
Um, some people might also call me a pushover. I am an empath, so I'm very much of a sponge. My energy might take up space. Physically, I don't take up too much space. Like, I'm not the type of person to argue. I'm not very combative. So sometimes that makes me come off as a pushover to people. I just like to pick my battles. I don't feel like I have to argue with everyone. So some people are like, oh, DeShon, you let people get over on you. I just didn't feel like that was worth the fight. That's usually what it is. So I think that's how people perceive me overall. One of the things that I just kind of mentioned was how hard it is to be a Black woman and truly establish a sense of self confidence. So I now want to kind of segue into how do you think Black women are viewed within society?
I think there are two spectrum. It's like a spectrum when it comes to how black people, I mean, how people view black women in society. So on one end of the spectrum, it's, we're loud, we're outspoken, vibrant, we express ourselves like no other, we stand out when it comes to our mind, our body, and our soul. And then on the other end of the spectrum, especially today, we're the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. We're go getters. We build empires. We're hard workers. We're bosses and strong, and we take care of ourselves and everybody else. So I guess the spectrum on the two different ends, I guess, is the positive way society views us, and then somehow the other end of the spectrum could be negative.
I agree. I think there's definitely two sides to the coin, like you mentioned with the spectrum. There is the side of us that is viewed as, strong and well educated and go getters and the backbone of most everything. And then more recently, I mean, not even more recently, this is something that's, reared its ugly horns throughout history, the way in which we're viewed based on our physical appearance. Black women also sometimes get seen as promiscuous, or there's this idea of Black women being fetishized, where we're often like the subject of a fetish, or we're over sexualized, or whatever the case may be. Which kind of brings me to more recent events. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, but their song kind of raised eyebrows because people felt like that was a negative way to depict Black women. I don't I don't know necessarily that I agree with that. I think that sex is it's a normal part of life. When we do it as Black women, it gets, or when we bring it up in music or in movies or whatever the case may be, I think oftentimes we get a negative view, but that might not necessarily be how we were intending it to be viewed. So I guess I kind of want to know, what is your opinion on the way in which people view Black women? I think sometimes they miss the complexity of who we are as people. We're still human beings. There's
Yeah.
still reasons behind all the things that we do, but oftentimes they take this two-dimensional idea of this is what we see when we see a Black woman.
I don't agree with some of the views that society has of black women because it's almost as if I don't know, it's like it's kind of when it comes to black women, it's almost as if society tries to, really create the narrative more so, it's almost like everything we do or we say almost always can be taken the wrong way. And, society takes it and tries to create the narrative of who the Black woman really is. And I don't agree. Like when you mentioned about, sexuality, and as far as when it comes to art and music, and, the Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallions and Nicki Minaj, people like that who some might say, they're over sexualized, their platform is sex. They're selling sex, but it is art, because I mean, because if they weren't Black women, I almost kind of think that wouldn't be what the narrative is on it. That wouldn't be what the perception is. Oh well, it's too much. But that's the thing. I feel like a lot of what we do, and when I talked about how we express ourselves like no other, a lot of what we do, it seems to be too much for people, and
And
so.
that's so interesting to me. Like the idea that Black women could be too much, because just like you said, if it were not a Black woman, I don't know that people would raise the eyebrow. You have to look back at, like, I'm not, I'm 26, so I grew up like with the music of the late 90s, and we're talking about Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, who were very sexualized when they were in the early phases of their career. These are women who were wearing like the two-piece bathing suits in their music videos, and nobody looked at them or raised a brow. But when Black women express themselves in the same way, it's looked at negatively.
Right. It's too much, and almost make it seem like because I look at it as we are just more, more vibrant and we stand out. But, they look at it like we enhance, ourselves, or we put emphasis on, certain, like the way that our bodies look compared to other ethnicities, or our hair or whatever, or the way that we speak, or all of that. It's like they make it like we're doing it, but this is who we are. And and if it's too much to some people, then that's their prerogative. Like I said, I think a lot of society tries to recreate our narrative, and who the Black woman is, what the Black woman is, and is turned into like this generalized perception. And we've all come to know it because we can say it. When you ask the question, you're like, oh, what you think people think about Black women? And we all say the same things, because that's the pushback that we get from every day from different people.
I agree, but to segue into the next question, how do you think that that affects how we view ourselves? Because you mentioned earlier in the conversation about how you working in a corporate setting sometimes makes you feel like there are things that you cannot do or cannot, ways in which you can or cannot wear your hair or dress. Do you think that that being a subtle policing of yourself, but even in the grander scheme, do you think that there are things that people have said about Black women or just women in general that have an effect on how you view yourself?
Yeah, most definitely. Because going back on that about working in the corporate setting, and about the how the Black woman expresses herself, we tend to tone ourselves down, or if we feel the need to tone ourselves down. And like you said, you called it a subtle policing of yourself. That's exactly what it is, and almost makes you view yourself in a negative sense. Because if you hear it enough times, or someone tells you enough times, you need to pull your hair back. If you wear a fro, you're natural, you need to pull your hair back for, interview. Or, you don't need to have blonde hair. You need to have natural tone hair. And when you're a woman who doesn't see anything wrong with it, that's how you express yourself. It makes you the more times you hear, you think about it, and you're like, oh well, maybe I do need to tone myself down. Maybe I do need to wear shorter inches, or maybe I do need to pull my natural hair back when I go to the interview. Maybe I don't need to put too much thought into my outfit. Maybe I need to look more plain when I go to work around, these type of people. And so it makes you kind of second guess who you really are. Because, like I said, freedom to me is just permission to express myself on the day to day. And so, if I'm not able to do that, that kind of cramps my style and my self esteem, and who I am, in a sense. Even when it comes to the way that we speak, or the things that we speak about as women and Black women, we We feel like we can't say certain things. We can't speak up about certain things in certain settings. And so, like I said, it's second guessing yourself in a way. And I think that part of how society views us is what makes us view ourselves negatively in a sense. But then on the other side of the spectrum, about when people think that we are go getters and we're bosses, those are the things that inspire us and make us think positive of ourselves. And that's what I think makes us be inspired by other Black women who assume those roles as a boss or go getter, CEO, or whatever. I'm a hard worker. And so on that end of things, I think those are the things that kind of helps how we view ourselves versus the other side of things.
I would agree. I definitely think that for me personally, in the field that I work in, because I am an actress and so often our physical appearance is the first impression we make. So actors first get seen with a headshot, and that's how they decide whether or not they want to see you audition most times. So with that being said, I'm a woman who maybe 85% of the time is going to have my hair in its natural state. I'm going to be wearing my natural hair. I don't often wear wigs, but I'm not a huge, like, I'm not somebody who's going to be against them. I love wigs. I call them my helmets. I like putting them on when I want to. They're good protective styles.
Yeah,
So because I like to express myself that way, I also have to be mindful of how that mean, like, how does that help me to stack up against my essentially competition in the industry. So being a Black woman who wears her hair naturally versus being a Black woman who wears her hair straight, or being a Black woman who wears weave, we're viewed two different ways. When you look at the media, you're going to see a lot of fair skinned women with loose curls as opposed to a fair skinned woman like myself with 4C hair. So for a minute, that kind of made me look at myself different. Like, am I going to be able to be successful in this career if I don't go and get a straight wig and get headshots in that? Like, are people going to even want to see me with my natural hair headshots? So then second guessing myself and my self image for my career, and that's not something that I wanted to do. I think the second that I stepped out of that is when I started to see more success within my career. All of my headshots are with my natural hair. I don't have any headshots with my wigs, and I've still been getting auditions, still been in some amazing positions, and seen some awesome opportunities with my natural hair, which was affirming. It made me feel like, okay, I can be myself in this industry and be appreciated, which was something that was exciting for me. So I guess kind of hearing you talk about your experiences in the corporate setting, I want to know, do you feel as if sometimes your career is a hindrance to your self image?
when it comes to the way I express myself and through my image is how I really do that. So yeah, but I think it also kind of brings out a certain side of me that is, clean, more clean cut, more professional, you know, about the business type of, person or personality that is within me. But when it comes to self expression, and like I said, I do that with my image. Yeah, because I use the phrase kind of cramping my style. So yeah, I think my career does cramp my style sometimes, because sometimes in that space I can't totally express myself, and so that makes me, distant in that space as well. Not really, just go to work, do what I have to do the job, and be good at it. But I don't do a whole lot of, socializing at work because of that. Because I feel like I'm not really free in that space to really be myself completely. And so, it's hard to make connections with people when, you're almost putting up a facade, because those connections will only last so long. The best connections that you make with people are when it's a relationship or a connection or something where the two people are totally being free to be themselves. So yeah, so in that way, when it comes to my self expression, I do think it hinders my self image.
It's interesting that you say that. So, overall, what are some ways that you go about combating any any negative forces that might impinge upon your self-image. Forces such as like social media and the media in general, like when you get on there and you're seeing women who may or may not look like you, how are you putting on some sort of an armor to make sure that those things don't affect how you feel about yourself?
I'm really big on affirmation because I see affirmations as kind of a way of talking to myself. And so I try to do that often and tell myself. I made an Instagram post recently that was, related to affirmations. I try to tell myself, really look in the mirror and tell myself what I see versus what other people see or what people, my friends, family, or what whoever might say or what social media says. Because sometimes, you scroll social media and like you said, women, they don't look like you, or you see things that you might relate to, but people are talking about it so negatively. And so I try to really just talk to myself, have conversations with myself often about what I see. Look in the mirror and tell yourself, what do you see? And what do you want to be? What do you want to see? If you don't see that now, what do you want to see? And so the more you tell yourself those things, the more I tell myself those things, the more I will come to believe them. So that's kind of me, building the armor, like you said, against what anybody else might think, against what, I might see. And then, that make me feel a certain way about myself because I might feel like I don't measure up or whatever. So that's been the biggest thing for me lately. Affirmations and kind of just talking to myself and telling myself what I see, because I think it's important for people when it comes to self image to really pay more attention about what you see or what you believe yourself to be or to look like, because that's what's most important. What other people think or see really doesn't make a difference, because what you think and what you see, the more you believe it, you'll project it.
Definitely. I think for me, and this kind of goes back to how Black women are viewed within society, but there's this idea that Black women are very womanly, like in our stature. Like we are typically women who have larger breasts and bigger buttocks or whatever the case may be. And I think that for a long time used to, hinder my self-image. So like now that social media is so prevalent and there's all these images of these women who have these perfect bodies, quote unquote perfect bodies, or you go shopping online and they have all these models who have these quote unquote perfect bodies. Sometimes that can infringe upon my self-image a little bit, but the way in which I've built up my armor is going back to, like I said earlier in our conversation, I always remind myself that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. So God made me this way for a reason. And I might joke around and say, like, God knew not to give me too much because he knew I would be out of control or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Like, I joke around with myself with things like that, but I really truly am content with who I am. It took a long time to get here, but at 26 years old, I can say that I'm really content with who I am. There's not much that I want to change about myself that I don't have control over. And that's a sense of contentment for me. And I'm really excited about it because that confidence kind of makes me feel like an unstoppable force when it comes to anything else. So feeling good about your self image, physically is one thing, but feeling good about your self image, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and all those things together is what really makes you a force. So before we, wrap up our conversation, I just really quickly want to ask you a little bit about how you think that women can work to generate a positive self image. Like, what are some things that you have done to help you generate a positive self image? Like, for me, my positive self image came from self reflection. So, spending time reflecting on who I am and who I want to be, and relinquishing control of things that I don't have control over. And then, really taking on control of the things that I do have control over. Like, I have control over my health and my mindset. And if I can work out to help my physical health, those are things that I'm doing to take control. But what are some things that you think women can do to ensure that they're developing a positive self image?
I think that's really, mental health is really important. Taking care of my mental health more lately in the last year or so has helped me generate a more positive self image about myself, how I view myself. Um, and journaling, that's something that I do on the regular. If you're not good mentally, the physical and the emotional and all of that will just all come tumbling down as well. But another thing that I think women should do to generate positive self image is really unlock your talents and spend time accessing those things and trying to find those things, finding what your purpose is, what you're good at. That's something that I've also done lately, because that's how the blog came about. Me unlocking what I was good at, what my talents are, and what God put me here to do. And I think that is making for a positive self image, because now social media isn't just about looking good anymore for me. It's about, how can I connect with these people? How can I help them? How can I, network and make positive connections and people? Because I think in that way, that creates a positive self image. You think good about yourself because you're putting out something good into the world, because you know what your purpose is, and you're doing that. It's not just when you find what your purpose is, you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for other people too. And so that is something that's really important and that I've done. Unlock your talents. Try to find what you're good at. Don't just do things because somebody else is doing it, or somebody told you should do this. But if it's something that you're truly good at, I think it'll build a lot of confidence and a sense of worth, and you'll feel like you're actually doing something meaningful. Overall, I think that's what a positive self image is.
I would agree. I think my token would be self reflection. I think it's very important to self reflect because that, like you said, that's how you figure out and learn and tap into those things. And that also comes to, depending on the listener's belief, how close you are in tune with your relationship with God. I think that the more I delved into my relationship with God, the more confident I was, because there's this idea of knowing who you are and knowing whose you are. And there's so much strength in that. So once you've established, okay, I know who I am, like that's something I mentioned earlier in our conversation. I know who I am. I know whose I am. I know that I am capable of most anything I try. That's a sense of confidence that I would not have been able to establish on my own, because I don't have that strength by myself. I have that strength through God. So my relationship with Him is what kind of helped also to bring me toward this unapologetic behavior, but also very transparent behavior in the way in which I present myself to others and to the world. Social media is big right now. So being on social media, I'm the type of person who's very transparent on my social media outlets. I don't have a problem with telling people, maybe not all of what I've got going on, but enough so that they can know that they're not alone. I think so oftentimes we try to make everything look so good. That's not realistic. So other people are looking at us like, so you don't have anything going on? So something must be wrong with me, because, I'm dealing with this or I'm dealing with XYZ. But, when you're transparent and showing people that you actually did have something that you were struggling with, and they might be struggling with that too, they feel better knowing that, oh, I'm not alone in my struggle. Somebody else is struggling. And ultimately, that's a part of growth. So, in closing, what is one thing you would like to leave the listeners with? Because you mentioned affirmation. So, is there an affirmation that you would like to share with the listeners?
Yes. And it's one that I told myself, just, was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. The lifestyle you desire is already yours.
Ooh, that's a good one. That is a That's a good one, because I think too often people think that like it's a destination, like I have to get there, I have to get there, I have to get there. And that's not necessarily the case. It's more of a journey. So like you're in it. You're already in it.
Hmm.
I think what I would like to leave the listeners with is, where you are right now is not where you will always be. It's one of my daily mantras, because I think sometimes when we get stuck in the valleys of life, we forget that there's peaks. So we're like, oh, I'm down here right now, woe is me. But we were just on a mountaintop the week before. So like never forgetting that today is not the end of the world. Like Although tomorrow is not promised, tomorrow is a new start. So always remembering that where you are right now is not where you'll always be. So, in closing, Kayla, this has truly been a wonderful conversation with you about self image. And I appreciate you being very transparent and sharing with the listeners who you are and how you view yourself and how you believe others view yourself. Um, that's amazing that you were able to do that. So, thank you so much for that.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me on. I love what Freedom Revamped is doing. I love what the platform is about and what it means, and I think it's really important. So y'all keep it up.
We will, we will. So Kayla, in closing, if you could just share with everyone how they can find you. You mentioned your blog, so share with them information on your blog. We'll have all of that in the description box for you all. But just so that you can share with them what it is you have going on and what you have coming up.
Yeah, so the blog, like I mentioned earlier, it's named after me. So the domain is www.kaylaalexis.com. And that is where you would find all of my blog posts, more information about me. My social media handles are linked on that website. You'll find how to get me on Instagram, Twitter, and what I have coming up. The blog just launched August 8th, just almost a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome.
Um,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And so it's done really well since then, and I'm so grateful for all the support. Um, from my now already followers and friends and people, who have known me. And so yeah, so upcoming right now, I have, I'm really putting emphasis on my pillars and what it is that the platform is about, what the brand is about. And so upcoming, more posts to come, more conversations to come. And I'm interacting more on social media. That's something that I've lacked, but now I'm trying to do better at that. So get hit the website, follow me on Instagram, and interact with me. I love talking to new people. Lifestyle, health, and beauty are my main pillars, and anything and everything under the sun you can think of that falls under those topics is what I'll be discussing on the blog. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kayla. We are signing off. And as always, remember to practice freedom. Good night, guys.